Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one today we're going to be having a little tutorial on how I paint some pretty decent looking, in my opinion, like battle ready Kroot. Now Kroot are an interesting model to paint because even though they're really cheap in game and they're a relatively old kit, they're a pretty detailed one. A lot of different textures and a lot of different types of material you're painting. There's some metal, some cloth, some skin. So this is just how I do it quickly and in a way that doesn't make it, too much of a drag to paint them all. So in this tutorial I'm just going to be painting one guy, but you can imagine you could obviously do this in batches. There's also going to be a couple parts where I've started like adding a little bit extra, but you can, and I'll say when it happens, that there's certain steps that you can skip and still end up with a relatively good result, just maybe not quite as much detail. So without further ado, let's jump in and see what we're doing today. Alright, so here we see our guinea pig, slightly kitbashed Kroot Carnivore. I just wanted this guy to look a little bit different than some of the other ones, as I have quite a few. Here we see a finished model that is going to be kind of what we're shooting for with this. I've changed up my process a little bit from that guy, so he's going to be slightly different, but we're starting the same way anyway. So first things first, we're going to do a layer of Agrax Earthshade. That's going to give us a bit more of a brown tone, obviously, to our skin. You could substitute this, and I have before, with Nuln Oil, with Quelea Green Shade, with Drakenhof Nightshade, and it's gonna tint your Kroot whatever color that is. What I do is I base coat all of these with Death Guard Green. Sorry, I guess that's the first step. And then what I do is actually change the washes depending on the model that I'm painting. So on all my carnivores, I do this brown wash, but then on my Krootox, if you notice, their skin is a little bit more gray, a little more bluish gray than these guys, and that's because I do two layers of wash. I do a Nuln Oil and an Agrax. So it's just little things like that. You can change them up, and it makes them look cohesive. It makes them look like they're all part of the same race, but while like differentiating them slightly, like they've diverged. So now that we've got that, and while we let that dry, I'm going to go ahead with this Dark Reaper, and this is what I use as like my main secondary color for the army. It's a pretty dull grayish blue. You can imagine in the jungles of Peck or whatever, it's not going to stand out and be too crazy. And I say that there's going to be some pretty bright colors coming later on, but I just think it goes well with the the kind of dark green colors that we're going to be working with here. And it's nothing too crazy, like and obviously sub this in for whatever color you want to do for your army, but that's what I'm doing here. So we're just going to do that over all of the cloth and the little bits of armor. You see, this is a 3D printed hand, so he's got a little extra piece of armor there, and he's got a glove. This is a Blood Bowl, a Kroot Blood Bowl hand, just to change it up a little bit. No real reason. This is still just a normal carnivore. He's not a character or anything. I just wanted the Kroot in this squad to stand out a little bit more. So just going to do a layer of this, and then I believe you'll see me go back in a couple spots and do like a thin second coat. Doesn't have to be too crazy. We're going to be doing more with it afterwards, but I'll shut up, let this finish up, and then we'll get on to the next color. Now, I don't know if you saw there, but I actually messed up. A big part of his back is green stuffed, just because of the way his arm his like extra arm there attached and stuff. And I believe this was an eBay rescue, and the back was kind of messed up. So I actually painted some of his back, thinking it was the cloth, and so I had to. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. I ended up just tidying it up with some green. What we're doing now, we're on to our next base color. So this is just plain black. You obviously use the Citadel black. This is just like a generic craft store brand black paint. I've never really seen much difference, honestly, for my blacks, because I'm always doing something more with it, so I don't really care. I guess if you're going for a glossy versus a matte finish, that could matter, but just your standard black. We're going to do that on his rifle. as well as his quills and the blades of the little knives on his back. Again, nothing fancy here. And while obviously you don't want to, you could mess it up pretty easily, don't have to be perfectly neat here, just because there is going to be more layers coming. I find with these Kroot models, it's pretty easy to tidy up your mistakes after with like your highlighting colors and stuff. It's easy to just get in there, and also anywhere that has a recess, because I'm going to be doing so much washing here. You put those dark washes in the recesses, and it's basically like using like a autocorrect tool. You know what I mean? Like if you get a little bit of one color into the recess where it's not supposed to be, you put a dark wash like an Agrax or a Null Oil in there. It's just going to cover that up. It's just going to make it so dark you can't see anyway. So I think we're pretty much done here. Just gonna just do a little bit of a second layer on some of this black. Get those knives on the back, as I said. Again, I think those knives they were there to cover up. I don't know what the person had done. It's like they had like melted part of his back. So that's where the green stuff came in, as well as putting the knives there just to clean that up. If you're wondering, that rifle, it's kind of unique looking, or I don't know, maybe it's more like a carbine if it's that short. It's just the standard Kroot rifle. All you do is you trim off part of the stock, and you kind of snip a chunk out of the middle of the barrel. Alright, so here we're on to our next color, and that is Steel Legion Drab. This is just a light brown, and basically all I do for that is the little like belly plates that the Kroot have. And then if you want to be fancy, so this is an extra step I don't do on all my Kroot, I do like some little brown stripes on their legs. Just helps to break it up, make the model more interesting, gives you an extra color, I guess, but you certainly don't have to. So I do, like I said, I do it on his chest, I do it on his feet, and then a couple of the little things on his back, like the straps on his knife, I get those with that as well. And not to worry that it's all the same color. Again, it's really easy to differentiate those things with some washes. You put Agrax on one, you put Null Oil on another. It'll make them look very different. Looks like I also had some little straps there on his arm. So next up, we have the Caliban Green. This is a very dark green, and all we're doing, so this is the step that's a little bit different from my original Kroot scheme. I'm just trying it out, trying a little bit more green, a little less brown. So all I'm doing is I'm very roughly, very like messily, you can see here I'm not being super neat and tidy, but I'm just hitting all the raised areas. So like the raised bits of his muscle, the raised digits on his hand, his kneecaps, the upper part of his thighs or whatever. Like, again, being quite messy, going in between those brown stripes we just did on his leg, but not covering the whole thing by any means. You could kind of think of this as your first layer for like his true color, or like even the first highlight. So we've made them a little bit greener now. Now we're going to start mixing in some Scarsnake Green. So what I've done now is I mixed that with our first color, not quite 50-50, maybe like 70-30, a little bit more Scarsnake Green. You can see here, this is really like your first highlight. It's really going to start brightening up. So as we get brighter and brighter, of course, we're going to start getting neater and neater. As you can see here, it's a little bit hard for me to talk actually, because it's going so fast. I'm trying to watch it and keep up as it's narrating. But so still being a little bit messy, but a little bit neater than the first layer, of course, hitting all those raised areas. Kroot faces and Kroot heads are so much fun to paint. You can definitely too get away with dry brushing most of this, and that's almost what I'm doing. You don't want a lot of paint on your brush for this. You want to get most of it off and almost dry brush for it. So we're going to set him down. So now, okay, yeah, so we're going back for some finer highlights now. This is just pure Scarsnake Green now, and as you can see, I'm being a lot more neat. I'm just hitting the actual raised areas. Again, with this, as with the other things, even though I'm being neat, if you do make a little bit of a mistake, don't worry too much, because again, it's very easy to correct. All you do is get some Null Oil, some Agrax, whichever wash you're using, and just like mix that 50-50 with water, and you can just kind of go in the recess that you accidentally went into. You know what I mean? Like if you go in the recess instead of the raised area you were trying to hit a little bit, maybe you're dry brushing and you didn't quite, you know, take enough paint off or something, and you got a little blob in there. It's super easy to fix. Don't stress about it too much. If you have to, of course, you can mix your paint again and go back to your first color. Now I believe, let me just see. Oh, we're into the next part. Okay, yeah, so now this is the true final highlight. And again, this is, you can feel like on most of my original Kroot models, I think there's only one highlight layer. So you can probably take off 1 to 2 of these steps and still have them turn out okay. I was just being a little bit extra fancy with this guy to really to push it a little bit more. Like again, this is probably a little bit more effort than I would want to spend on a 6-point model. But like I said, all in total, I think this guy start to finish took me a bit under an hour. So it's still not a crazy amount of time, and if you were batch painting it, you could definitely crank him out that way. But if you want to skip a step or two, skip a highlight here, definitely don't skip the washes, but if you want to skip a highlight here or there, you could definitely get away with it and still have them turn out looking good. So yeah, so what I've done now is I just mixed in a little bit of Ulthuan Gray with that Scarsnet Green, just to make it even brighter, and you can really see now that all those raised areas are really starting to pop. I'll probably have at the end here, I'll have some nice pictures popping up just to show what he looks like all done. So now we're done with our green. We are going with, okay, so this is, oh, I gotta remember my paints. This is Drakenhof Nightshade, so this is the dark blue wash, and so we're just gonna put that on all of our blue parts that we did earlier. So the cloth, the little bits of armor. It's gonna darken it up, make it more of a dark navy gray. We're gonna let that dry for a little bit, and we're going to go with, we're going to go back with our Agrax, and we're going to put that on all of the brown parts. You're also going to use that like along the edges of the armor and the cloth, like especially the cloth on his chest. Take some Agrax after you've done your blue, and like I said, that's where you can really make it pop. You go right along the edges of it, and it'll make it stand out better. Now we're on to some Lead Belcher, and this is super easy, and it honestly looks really good in my opinion, because all the parts that we painted black, you're just gonna not quite dry brush, but almost dry brush. You can see I got most of the paint off there, and you're just gonna kind of flick your brush like vertically on the part that you're painting, and it's gonna give it that kind of just like dinged up, simple metal look, like very like realistic to like a, you know, just a simple metal firearm. Some people go really fancy on their Kroot rifles. I never felt the need to, and by all means, if you want to, do it. But I think for me and for my army, I think this looks good enough without having to waste a ton of time on, you know, painting the handle to look like it's wood or whatever. Just a simple metal rifle for a simple aliens. Now we're mixing in, again, that Ulthuan Gray is like my favorite paint. We're going to mix a little bit of that in with our Dark Reaper, and we're going to do our first little highlights. Again, being a little bit messy, but the spaces we're painting here are pretty small, so we do have to take our time a little bit. I'm going to do some little edge highlighting on the armor there, just get the edges of the cloth where it sticks up. And then we're going to actually go and we're going to add in a little bit more of the Ulthuan Gray and do, yeah, there we go. We're going to do some final highlights. And I usually, like on like the armored shoulder or whatever, I'll do a couple little scratches or something. On some of them, I won't do the scratches. I'll do like a little bit of war paint or whatever. On that guy, I did a scratch. And yeah, so now the blue cloth is done, and we will be on to, oh, I'm just tidying up again a little bit of the Agrax Earthshade. There must have been a little spot there that I messed up. Now we are on to doing one of my favorite parts. This is the eyes. So you're going to get Mephiston red and mix it. Make sure you got your paint to a really good consistency. Mix in a little bit of water and just hit the whole eye. I usually also hit like Kroot eyes, like the way they're modeled. It's like the eye and then there's the lower eyelid. I usually just hit both because it is very, very small. Then I go back in with Evil Sun Scarlet. That is the brighter red paint, and just hit the pupil with that. Now, we were a little bit messy, obviously neater than the other stuff, but if you are a little bit messy and you know, hit a little bit more of that space, now I go in with some Druchii Violet, which is the dark purple wash, and you saw there that I just very delicately put it in the recesses around the eye, leaving the bright part that we did with Evil Sun Scarlet, but by putting it in that dark spot, like in the recess around the eye, it will really make that red pop out. And then I also went, and this is a little detail that you don't need to do, I went and put it in some other little recesses along the model. It just adds a little more depth to it, makes the skin tone a little more interesting to throw a little bit of purple in there with the green. Now we're doing a part that everybody seems to really like on my models. This is the war paint. As you can see, super, super simple. We're just, the Kroot head like naturally lends itself to this. You just hit the raised areas. I do this first with Screaming Skull, which is like your light bone color paint. And so you do it however you want on your model. I try to come up with a whole bunch of different variations just so the squad looks all unique. But generally, I do a pretty thick line, and I not quite dry brushed, but almost dry brushed. Take a lot of that paint off to make it look like messy, like it was done like, you know, by a Kroot hand. Think about the orcs in Lord of the Rings. So I go like up his chin and a line like down his forehead. I hit the raised bits of his eyebrows going back to his crest. And once you've done that, then I go back in with, again, that Ulthuan Gray, that lovely, lovely off-white color. And I do a very, very fine line along each of the spots I hit, and that just brightens it up a little bit more. While I was doing that, I also did the handles of his little knives, so that they're just like, you know, bone knives or whatever. On those bone knives, the way I do bone really simply is I do some Seraphim Sepia in there. As you see, I just dabbed a little bit of it off with my finger there, just a little bit like in the crevices or whatever. Just makes it look a little like old bone. Now the last part of the war paint, and I believe the last part of the model, is the blue. I use Thousand Suns blue. And again, I try to mix it up on my models. I do different every time. This guy, I did a couple stripes on his bayonet, and I also did a couple on his chin. What I'm going to do again, that Ulthuan Gray, it is the best paint in the entire world. Mix a little bit of that in with the Thousand Suns blue to highlight your war paint. And I forgot here, and I'll go back and do it right now. This is the same way I do his quills on the back. Now for the quills, I usually do at least 3 different shades of it. So I'll do Thousand Suns blue, and then I'll do like 50-50 Thousand Suns with Ulthuan Gray, and then I'll do like 70-30 Ulthuan Gray to blue. So it's ending, the very tips of the crest, I try to have them like a very, very bright white blue color. But yeah, so once that is done, we will be pretty much done the model. I'll shut up and let other Zach finish painting, and we'll have a little chat at the end of it. I did, of course, forget, as I keep forgetting everything, to do the little bits of black that weren't metal, so just his quills on his head and the little ones on his hands. All I do is a quick little highlight with some Dawnstone, just a very just plain gray color. As we can see, the models are all finished. Here we see the finished product next to the original. As you can see, it's like I said, my new recipe here is a little bit greener than my original one, but that's okay because Kroot are all about variation. So as I said, mixing it up with some washes here and there, different colored ones, can really help diversify your Kroot force and make them unique. That's how they are in the lore. You totally don't have to, but it's just something cool. You could have one, you could be like, oh, this is the green squad, they're a little bit more green. This can be the brown squad, they're a little bit more brown. And yeah, so thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully it was helpful. Let me know if you want any more tutorial style videos like this. Huge thank you to the people on my Patreon. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.